Welcome, Shae. I'm so excited to chat with you today.
Hello. It's
Hello,
always
hello.
lovely to see you.
Yes, and I'm excited to dive in and just hear more about your experiences with working with the land, but maybe we should just start with your background and share a little bit about your spiritual journey and how you got to this place where you felt drawn to work with the land at all.
Okay. It's kind of long. I'll try to make it make sense in a shorter way. Back in 2018, 2019, I was becoming disenchanted with my art career. I was a portrait painter. And I decided that my creativity and art and my life in general was missing a spiritual element that I had when I was a teen that somehow just went by the wayside. So I started seeking knowledge and practitioners and workshops and stuff like that. And it was really hard to just Google search, and I just decided to turn my social media into a spiritual platform to as a way to follow all these teachers and practitioners as a way to kind of feel them out, see if I align with their beliefs and that sort of thing. The first thing I did was a workshop with a medium from Nashville named Bonnie McCliss. She's amazing. And her thing is she really wants to teach people how to tap into their clair um, abilities. And to she so her I did a workshop with her where she was teaching us to trust the message we get, and that our imagination is like active connection to spirit. And I'd never heard that before. So, in trusting these messages that come, I started getting messages about purpose, and art was kind of floundering. And I was getting these messages about healer, like you're a healer. And I had resistance to that from the very beginning, but had a connection with crystals and minerals. And so went into studying crystal healing. And somewhere in making my social media a spiritual educational platform, I found you. And I was so fascinated with all of your stories. And I felt like I was learning so much from you just from your social media. And I was like, this was a modality I didn't realize existed. And I'd never heard of anyone that worked with the energies of the land or nature spirits. Thought of that as an indigenous Native American thing, and it wasn't really accessible to me. But the more I watched and then finished my training in crystal healing and crystals in general and started working with humans, there was big resistance. It just did not feel right to work with human energy. And then I was getting the message like, there's a reason why you're so interested in following hawks. There's a reason. Maybe this is you. Maybe this is your modality. Maybe this is your thing. And once I started watching your content with, is this for me? Is this more than entertainment? It really started to land. And that's where I was like, this is me. I can do this. This is the work I want to do. These are the types of exchanges I want to have with spirit. And so I signed up for the class, and to be honest, I did not finish it all because there was so much in the practices that I really felt like I was getting it. And then further on, I went to the retreat in Taos, and to be in person with you and the group and doing those readings together, I was like, it was so validating because I wasn't so good at getting on the calls, and I want to be better about that now. to do those kind of group readings is so incredibly validating. And yeah, so now um, with practice, I feel like I'm doing some of this on my own. I don't feel like I've mastered it. Maybe I never will. Maybe that's not a thing. Um, but I want to get more into it. I want to dive deeper into it. It's
For
made
sure. And
me it's
oh,
made
go
me
ahead.
see the world in a totally different way. Um, that whole concept of slowing down and really savoring beauty and nature and that sort of thing, I think is a huge part of this and this work. And it's like all of a sudden the world became just an incredibly beautiful and welcoming place. And it's like a switch flipped, you know, and it's like all the nature spirits know that the switch flipped in me and that I see everything completely different now.
And then they engage with you differently when they know
Yes.
that.
Yes. I feel like I don't know, like I was walking on a trail and I noticed a caterpillar eating a leaf and he was almost completely done with that leaf. And I just had to stop and stare at it. And I'm sure I was communicating it, but it wasn't a conscious effort. It was all about awe and wonder. And that felt like a gift to me. And then the fact that I stopped and let myself be in awe was a way of honoring the tree spirit and the caterpillar spirit and everything that was in the area.
I love that so much. And I mean, I love also the idea, not just awe being kind of really like a portal in, right? Like that,
Mm-hmm.
but invitation to step into the natural world deeper. But even your mention of the other class that you took with, imagination being direct access to spirit, because, we talk about that in Earth Hunters a lot too. I think we've just all been told, just obviously since childhood, right? That
It's
we
just
don't,
makes
yeah, you're just making it up. It's all pretend, which is, I think, the biggest hurdle a lot of us have in starting to do this work. It's like, well, I saw things, but I probably just made that up, or I just created that in my head. And so I do think when we do these readings together and we're able to share notes and compare, is really sometimes the first time we're able to say, okay, well, they got what I got, so I must not be making this up.
that reading we did on the little farm in Taos where like three or four of us saw the exact same being.
Yes.
That was I was like, oh, I'm doing it. I'm,
Everybody was so excited too,
we're
right?
really doing this.
Because it wasn't just like seeing or imagining, in your mind kind of a similar being, which you all did, but it was the personality qualities were so similar too, that, the way that this being spoke to those of you who saw him was just really, really specific. And it was really, that's just so fun when that happens.
Yeah, it was amazing. And it's just and for whatever that's worth, like that exchange, like I don't know what major, like we all saw the same stone being, but it's like what happened, I don't know, does it matter?
Right.
We saw him, we elevated the frequency by connecting over all of us seeing him and the excitement that comes with that. I mean, I feel like that's part of the work too, and it's not forced, it's like a natural consequence of making those kind of connections, is like, oh, you see me, like the rock being's name was Frank. And so now Frank gets to go around and talk about these ladies that he met, whatever that
These
means.
humans that saw him.
Yeah. These humans, they saw me, they were here, they care. They
Right.
looked for me and they saw us and they care about the energies that are here. And I think that's healing and elevating in a lot of ways too.
It really is, because we forget how much, this communication between the realms is so broken in so many ways that, we forget that they don't have the opportunity to communicate with humans very often either. And so like they're just as excited as we are, and they're just as excited that like you see to be seen and to have somebody to offer to help and to work together.
Like that in and of itself is medicine, right? Like I love that. And if you and sometimes when I do this stuff in places, if the spirits there get so excited because it's just been so long since anyone saw them or felt them or looked or that sort of thing. And so sometimes I think
Yeah.
that is like, when was the last time someone threw a crystal into this body of water? You know?
Right, right. Now you have a real affinity for both the crystals and the water. Was
Yeah.
that all kind of coming up before the course, or through the course, or how did that come about?
No, that all very much came out of the course, and out of my experiences with you in the retreat and your sharing, your podcast. Like there's a lot of learning that goes on just in your podcast and just in your content on social media. Um, so yeah, I just sort of walked into it as like, I'll take whatever. And I was moving to Northwest Arkansas from Central Arkansas and was having trouble selling my house. So I hired you to do the reading on my house. And what you saw in that reading also validated that I've been doing this type of work, and that also my husband is very involved in this type of work, because kind of this stuff you said, you talked about how we opened a portal there. We did some major earth moving and dynamiting there to build that house, and that was all his idea, and he was driven to do it by unknown forces. He's a builder, and he's really into Frank Lloyd Wright, and he talked nonstop about how he channeled Frank Lloyd Wright while we were building the house. So that reading really validated on how I was working with crystals there. And I had already, because we had already moved, we just hadn't sold the old house, but we moved to the White River in Northwest Arkansas. And I'd already had this inkling that we were coming here to work with this water. And then after that reading, that completely validated that and totally became my focus. And I've done several shamanic journeys connecting with the river, and there's a spring it's kind of a recent discovery. Like, we knew it was around here somewhere, but I've now in these experiences figured out exactly where it is. And I feel like that's part of why we're here too, is all of these waters. And the White River is really dynamic, and it eventually flows in all directions, makes a big circle. It provides water for a huge bit of the population up here and in southern Missouri. And I don't know, I just think it's really important. And I've been at it for a while, but I kind of feel like I'm just getting started on what she wants, what she needs.
Yeah, sometimes it really takes a while for it all to unfold, especially, like some of it's our own education and understanding. And then I think sometimes, like you say, the spirits haven't worked with humans for so long, like they're relearning how to work with us as well. And sometimes it takes a while for them to either communicate what it is they really need, or to trust us, or to know that they can ask or whatnot. And so sometimes it is like I'll be working with something for 2 or 3 years before suddenly I go, oh, now I understand what they want, now I understand what the issue is. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And like with the river, it's been a real learning curve on figuring out a language for us to use. I'm a super visual person, and being a portrait painter, and I studied the human figure all through my collegiate career in art school. And so I want to personify everything, and a lot of times when I meet tree spirits or an energetic steward, it is a person, 100%. Well, she was not a person. Like, she's like, I'm not a person, I never was a person, I'm not a person. And so we had to
You're
We
talking about
had
the spring.
the river, the
The
river.
river. Okay.
The spring shows is a very masculine energy, and it shows itself to me as like a muscular, like Tauran figure. Like he has big bull horns. But
Mm.
the White River herself, she's I think of her as a river goddess. And but she's made it clear she's not a person. And the big thing I've gotten out of her, the overarching work with the river, has to do with whales. I don't know. I've always had an affinity for whales. I feel like I'm a whale person, whale energy, cetacean energy person. Um, and around the time when I was first really trying to connect with her, I was drawn to go see whales too, like simultaneously. I was studying maps of the river and all these areas I wanted to go to, and all the dams in the river. And did I want to go to the river? I mean, so I was trying out all these ideas on how to help the river. Um, like, do I go play my bowls? Do I offer crystals? Am I singing to the river? Is the dams what she wants to address? And nothing set. Like I made a map. I almost planned a trip to go to all these places around Arkansas where these points in the river I thought were poignant. Um, and what really got booked and what really happened was a solo trip to San Diego to see the whales. And I had an amazing blue whale experience. This was back in 2021. Yeah, 21. I had an amazing experience with the blue whale where it actually sang under our boat, and that's really rare for humpbacks. You hear their song a lot, and other types of whales, but it's really rare to hear because you don't hear a blue whale, you feel it. It's a vibration. So that happened, and I came back really jazzed about that and wanted to tune into the river. And I was like, I want to tell you a story about going like what it was. I was trying to communicate with her, and one of the things I have problems with is asking the right questions to get good answers or knowings or visuals or whatever it is. I'm usually like, I make the connection and I sit there like, hey, what's up?
Just talk to me. I'm here.
I'm here. And so I'm in the water, we're having this conversation, and I don't know what to ask. And I'm like, okay, ask something good, ask something good. And I start visualizing this little pod of killer whales because I'm in the water. I'm visualizing myself inside the water, and the surface of the water is above me. And I see them kind of coming over us. And I giggle and I say, oh, what if we manifest whales in your waters? And she goes, we did. And she shows me because on that trip I went and got a big blue whale tattoo on my back too.
Oh my
So
God.
she showed me my tattoo and was like, we did, that's what you did. I was like,
Oh my God.
oh, oh,
Well, plus you received those frequencies, so I'm sure they were within you when
yes,
you
yeah, it was
came
more than
back.
just
And
the visual, yeah. And I
yeah, that's
didn't
amazing.
really see that until this year when I wanted to go back to see the blue whales again. And my husband really wanted to come with me this time. And I decided I really wanted to make it a ritual. I really wanted to make it count. And so I filled up a bunch of little vials of water from my spring, which just came out of my tap because my well is about 200 feet from the spring. So I figure it's the same water, but it's drinkable. I wanted to be able to drink it like an elixir too, or else I would have just gone and got it out of the lake. But so I put them in little vials and put little crystals and went on 3 different tours and saw an amazing amount of whales. And I feel like I've collected their energy. I still haven't come up with the ritual for putting it back in the river, but it's coming to me. But
Well,
but that's the kind of, I don't know, that's all of this kind of stuff is really sprung from your classes and your experiences and all of that.
I love it. And I love hearing all of the different ways that it unfolds for different people, right? That like we all have these unique and special gifts that aren't all the same and aren't our connections aren't the same. And so really just kind of learning how to tune in to that and hear those messages for yourself to know exactly that, like, oh, I want to work with the water. Oh, I need to go to San Diego and see the whales and come back, right? Like all of those things are like that's unique and special to you and what you can do because you're living right there on the river.
And it was, none of it was purposeful. Like I said, I was trying out all this other stuff. And it was like the thing that got booked, it was something in me went, pay attention to what actually happens. What,
Mhm.
so it wasn't until, after I came back from that first trip that I was like, oh, I was supposed to, that's what that was for. I was supposed to bring those energies here. And I don't know, whales is something I want to learn more about. I know like a lot of biological stuff about whales, but I want to learn more about their spiritual story or channelings that might be around about them, because I feel
Yeah.
like they're up to something.
Yeah, for sure. It's another story that's unfolding
Yeah.
over time.
Yeah, totally.
Well, what would you say as you've been exploring these different kind of themes and ideas, like were there any specific tools or things that you learned that you find have been most helpful to you in that process?
um I can't think of like specifically, other than really trusting the shamanic piece of it. um that in our heads, we are working with these energies in that way. um I honestly, it's your sharing your experience makes it so real, and makes it like, hey, me too, you know and I really appreciate that, and the fact that it's um meditation driven and guided meditation. It's that's been a really good thing for me, because I also lead meditations, and in these practices I'm learning to lead and also follow my own lead, because that it's, you probably know what I'm talking about, that it's different, it's a
It's
different.
very, yeah, it's a very different thing to be kind of in a meditation versus
Yeah, I can
guided.
take someone on a shamanic journey and be like the beacon and the light and the discovery person, but I'm not in it. I'm not, things don't come to me because putting, I'm thinking about what's next. And but that is crossing over for me too. And doing these live calls and practices with you is helping, that is just giving me more practice.
Yeah, I find shamanic journeying is very it's requires a different kind of attention or focus than like simply listening to a guided meditation, right? Because
Mhm.
there's so much happening. And certainly if you're leading it as well, you're like channeling and paying attention to what's coming next or what you're being shown while also being like, oh, this thing is happening over here for me. And let
Mhm.
me think about that and remember that while also following along and not forgetting that I'm guiding.
Yeah, that's a
And even if you're
duality
not,
I'm learning.
yeah, even if you're not guiding, just also all of that, like being in this state of like light meditation, right? So you can kind of focus and direct or ask questions or um, participate in a different way than just feeling like it's all happening to you.
Yeah, yeah, and really just the practice of it, doing it often is.
Yeah, that makes a big difference, and I think a lot of people ask, how can I do what you do? And a lot of it is like, well, the more you do it, the better that you get and the more experiences. And even to your point about whether or not, you could be a master, like I don't know, because I feel like I learn something new every time
Yeah,
because, every spirit has a different perspective that you interact with, or they'll instruct you to do something in a different way, or they'll show you something that you're like, oh, I never thought to do it that way, right? So you're just like constantly adding, experiences and tools to your tool belt, and, things with every experience and every practice that you do.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of it, too, for me was coming over the hurdle of self-confidence, you know, um, that magical things like this can be for me, that magical things like this are for me.
Right.
Um, that's a place that I think most humans don't get to, is that we all have it, we all can learn it. It's just practicing and trusting.
Right. And it's so subtle for most people that it is just easy to dismiss or think you're making it up, or
Mm.
that you imagined it. And once you're able to really sink into that and be like, no, it's really happening. I'm really seeing it, or I'm hearing it, or I'm feeling it. And let me just trust that. And that's why I love doing those practice readings, because
Mm.
the more we get to do it, the more we can say, okay, that seemed weird to me, or I've never seen that before, or like it seemed really subtle, but I'm just going to write it down. Right. And then when you share with each other, you say, okay, I was not the only one that got that. Like that was
No,
definitely not me
and
making that up.
and we're not all in the same room like we were in Taos for that reading. Like we're all scattered all over the world.
Right.
It's so amazing to me. Like that's, you can't deny magic in the world if you experience something like that, you know.
No, no, it's really, really very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, I would love to also hear a little bit about your crystal work, because I think it's really unique. And obviously, being here in Arkansas, like there's a very unique geology with the crystals here
Yeah,
as well. So I think like you have a real affinity for them. I'd love to hear more about that.
I really do. And it's funny too because I think a lot of our Kansans take it for granted, you know, and it's just like, oh yeah, it's one of our industries, you know, and we do literally find them in the backyard. Like you don't have to go to a mine. I mean, of course, you're going to have better chances when you go to a mine, but um, so I feel like being in Arkansas is like being born and raised and traveling a lot, but never living anywhere else is obviously, I feel like I'm supposed to be working with the crystals. And uh, I learned from a lady who has a mine in Mount Ida how to read crystals. And that's an interesting process where it's like over the millennia, different mediums and channelers have attached like spiritual, energetic meanings to each of the ways that the crystals naturally form. There's because of their geometrical structure, there's only about 100 different ways they can naturally like form their shape. That doesn't, I'm not talking about like inclusions, other minerals around that make them brown or have iron strains in them or whatever. I'm talking about the faces of the points and other crystals growing on them in certain ways and that sort of thing. So I have a little crystal shop and booth, and I go to little events, and I have crystals that are all like the same monetary value, and you choose a crystal, whichever one you want for any reason. You can look at them, you can touch them, you can whatever. And based on their most obvious, like 4 or 5 characteristics, those energetic meanings start to tell a story. And the next thing you know, I have people at my booth going, how did you know I was thinking about quitting my job? How did you know that I probably need to break up with my boyfriend? And I do a lot of this stuff at like spiritual events, and there will be other readers there, and I'll have someone who goes to all of them and come back to me and said, you all said the same thing. And that's so validating and beautiful, and I love it so much. And it's not um it's like what I love about it is it's physical. It's stories, mythologies kind of attached to these physical pieces of these very magical rocks, right? And so I can approach readings very logically, and then intuition and channeling really kicks in as I'm putting all the features together into a story that makes it personal. And then sometimes I'll get features that I've never seen before. And I'll because I've only got about 45 of the 100 memorized. That's all that my teacher had in her realm. I think that's plenty. That's
That's
a
a
lot.
lot. That's a lot.
So when I see something that I haven't seen before, I just put logic right into it. And I think that's like a lot of the way you kind of decode spirit animals. Like, if you feel like you're working with fox, then you look at how they behave in nature naturally and kind of interpret that in a spiritual way. So same with the crystals. And so if it has, a formation that, one I've kind of made up and I use a lot. I'm not gonna say made up.
Tapped into.
It intuited.
Yes.
Is there's certain ways that they break too. That's part of it. And like I'll see a big break near the point, and I call it like head trauma. And I say it's like something that really surprised you, something that kind of knocked you off your feet, and things like that. That was not what I was taught, but it makes sense physically.
Yeah.
And usually it all, almost always makes sense with the rest of the reading. And then the other person is like, yeah, I found out my partner was cheating on me, or something like that. Like it gets validated.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's so interesting how we are intuitively drawn to pick up the right crystal
Mm-hmm.
too, without even totally realizing it. Because we did this earlier this year. A few of us were gathered to do a little bit of land work, and Shae just said, "Oh, just pick a crystal out of the pouch." Like I don't even think we could see them, right? Like we just picked one, and yeah, and the reading was spot on for what had been
Like
going on in my life.
it's 100% how oracle cards and tarot cards work
Right.
too. And the difference with crystal readings is you get to look at them, touch them, because the physical characteristics are so vague, you're not already interpreting it as you're looking at it. I've had people come
Right.
at those events and take 20 minutes to pick out, because they don't trust themselves,
They're
to pick
worried they're
out the
gonna
one
pick
that's
the
really
wrong
going to
one.
tell them something. And I'm like, you just need to close your eyes at this point, because like you're out of it. But yeah, and then the other cool thing about it is you get to keep it.
Right.
It's yours, and it gets to go on and do all that work with you and remind you to stay on your path, and stuff like that. And I think it's real special, and it is kind of rare, and it's a hard thing to do. I mean, you have to have a whole bunch of crystals, and you have to it's not like you just have an oracle deck that you work with really well and really well, and you're using the same deck over and over. These little guys go out in the world.
Yeah. Do you find that they volunteer for
Oh,
these
100%.
specific jobs? Yeah.
Oh yeah, this is what. So like and I took you one of my favorite mines that I like to do wholesale with in Hot Springs. We went to go dig one time, or whenever I go dig there, I don't have a good experience. I don't know what it is. I love the way they do business. I get all those points for my readings from them. But going and digging is a very hard experience for me. And it was only recently, and it's like I've been going all my life. Only recently did I realize it's because it's kind of painful how you get them out of the ground. Like it's not the energy of the land's like favorite thing. And so that could initiate some feelings like, oh, it has to stop. But no, then how do we get them in our hands and work with them? And how do I get to share them and teach other people about, the energetic qualities of that specific one, if they aren't blown to bits and drug out? And so it's a hard that's a tough one. It's like I don't think that they are meant to stay in the ground forever. I believe they're doing good work. They're in the ground. Like they're not asleep.
No, I do too, and I think that right that there's plenty of them that are never going to come above ground, right? They're always going to stay in the earth, and then there's like the volunteers really that
Yeah.
have come to the surface, and they either want to have their own experience of going out and about and moving around in a way they never could have done otherwise, but also raising the consciousness of humanity
Hmm.
because we need
And
to interact with them
and
differently.
the story is that has been channeled is that our crystals are the Atlantean crystals of knowledge,
Right.
and that the wise ones of Atlantia knew that the destruction was coming, and they imparted all of their knowledge and wisdom into these giant crystals, like they're supposed to be, skyscraper size or bigger. And they planted them in Arkansas, and there's only like a small number of them, like under 10, and they cover the entire state or something like that. And then all these that we dig up and pass around and blow out with dynamite and that sort of thing are all their descendants. So the idea is that we are all carrying around this ancient Atlantean knowledge. And another thing I want to say about Arkansas crystals is there's a feature called Lemurian, which Lemurian is an older civilization than Atlantia. And Atlantis supposedly fell because of its corruption, but Lemuria didn't have they didn't have corruption. It was supposed to be much more peaceful. There's a feature that crystals have where they are kind of tapered and they have these lateral lines in them. All
Mhm.
Arkansas crystals have those. All of them. All of them. There's not like I don't even talk about it in my readings because they're all there. Every single one of them has it, and that's supposed to symbolize like peace and harmony and collective consciousness, like peaceful collective consciousness is what that's supposed to mean. And so I like to think that the wise ones of Atlantis put Lemurian crystals here because that was the last piece of their peaceful existence, or that's where the peacefulness of Atlantia came from, Lemuria. I'm not super educated on that. These are like some channelings that I've heard here and there. I have a thing about channelers. I don't trust all of them. So if I'm into it, they've been vetted in some way, or at least at line, energetically. So
Yeah,
um,
and I've been down there to Hot Springs, Mount Ida area 3 times just in the less than a year that I've been here. I was just there again this weekend. And I totally feel that. And I think everybody there feels it, right? Whether they realize it or not, just every time. And you and I were there together in the spring, and we had kind of commented on the same thing. Like it's this really almost like cooperative energy. It's very calming. I was at a completely, packed national park campground this weekend, and I was like, everyone here is so mellow. Like kids are just playing in the creek, but having a good time, right? But like there was it's just the most peaceful, relaxing, yeah, like cooperative is the word that kind of comes to me.
mhm.
Energy there. So it wouldn't surprise me at all that like that's what's vibrating out like from that area.
But that being said, like I agree with you, and that is what it feels like with nature there. But in the populated parts, there is the humans that are born and raised there. There's a super chaotic energy about them, and I don't know what it is. Growing up in Little Rock, which is about an hour from there, um, uh, we called it Carney Town because it was like the whole town seemed like carnies that that just decided to plant and live there. I can't explain it other than that. It's like and a lot of people I know that come to Arkansas like seeking energetic nature and energetic land. They think they want to go to hot springs, because that's where the crystals are, or Eureka Springs because that's where but that is where the most chaotic energy is to me.
Yeah, it's so funny
And
because
it's
as
like,
much as I
yeah,
enjoy,
come to Arkansas, but live, an hour from there.
yeah,
So
I don't feel drawn to live in either one of those places. It's so funny, but and I enjoy going there, but
yeah, going is
not to.
amazing. And partaking in the energy as this visitor is amazing, but there's something about the stay quality of it. You just
Well, it's
don't.
interesting because I was just re-listening to a conversation that I had back in the spring with my friend Velvet, who has done those, City of Light maps, and I'm about to put it on the podcast. And I forgot that that was what she was talking about, was this area coming online that's Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas, parts of Louisiana, and she thinks it's kind of centered. And after I re-listened to it and was just there again this weekend, I would agree. I think it's centered on Mount Ida, this area.
Hallelujah.
And that her sense is that it is the lesson to be learned in the City of Light is like the we are all one, which would be a very Atlantean thing, right? That we the people is the lesson, but that, right, we're still in duality. So in order to learn that lesson, you have to have the opposite in that area. And so that a lot of these cities of lights have that kind of duality culture of like, there is this really beautiful energy here, but a lot of people are here to learn that lesson.
Mm-hmm.
And so they are not currently in that state. And so it makes sense hearing you say that would be part of like what, who is being drawn to that area, and how, some people are there to anchor that in, and others are there to experience it,
Mm-hmm.
experience all sides of it.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like I am a being of anchoring it in. And if you look at the map of where I've lived, I've circled all around there. And Eureka, and now I'm up near Eureka Springs.
Yeah.
So it's like I'm doing my work from the edges because the center is way too intense.
It's very intense. It's very,
Mhm.
yeah. I lived in the City of Light in Montana, and it was intense there. And it was very clear, like when the time was over, right? That was it. So, yeah, I'm happy to be on the fringes this time.
Yeah.
Well, I know we like veered off a little bit there, but I think obviously with Arkansas, everybody's always interested in talking about the crystals, and asks me a lot of questions, and I haven't been here long enough to have as much experience as you have. But I mean, what are you feeling? What's next for you? What projects are you working on?
Oh,
What's coming up?
um, more work with water for sure. There is, wow. Okay. So now I'm really putting this together too. So when my spiritual journey started back in 18, 19 or so, and I started seeking all that, a friend of mine just dropped a little information on me. Did you know that 4 of our major rivers all start on the same mountain in the middle of nowhere, Arkansas? And the Buffalo is our national river. The White is my river. And the Mulberry and the Kings River. And they're all like major rivers that start, and every single one of them start and dump into another river in Arkansas as well. Um, and I thought that was really magical. And my husband thought it was neat too. And I said, I think I can figure out, we can go put our feet in all those headwaters. And I did not think of it as a ceremony. I did not think of it as a ritual. I did not think of it as anything other than the kind of weird do nothing vacations that my husband and I love to take. We're usually like staring at water or something like that. And this was like driving around. And it was such a neat experience. And now I want to create like a retreat or some sort of ceremony around it, with other women that have the same sort of intention. Because my husband and I didn't. We were just driving, and it was like, oh, put your toe in. We weren't. But now I'm like, that's where it started.
Yeah.
That's where it started. And also, I just took a trip to Wales because I'm really into all the mythologies and magic and ancient practices of my ancestral heritage. And over there, oh, I lost my train of thought. You'll have to edit this part. Um, Over there, I was hanging out with druids, and they were saying to my group facilitators, "Hey, can we come to your lands? We want to see your sacred sites." And everybody, my facilitators were all from New York, like Manhattan, New York. They were not. They came to Wales to experience nature, like there wasn't any in the U.S. And they're all kind of like looking at their feet, like, "Oh, I guess we could think of something to do." And I'm like, oh, "Come to Arkansas." So it really inspired that conversation, which wasn't a conversation, it was just a question, really inspired, like, I want to create pilgrimages for Arkansas where we go to these sacred springs. There's a bunch of them, and these special rivers, and there's some really bizarre geology around the hot springs area and the Talamina area, with all the magnetic iron ore and quartz beds there together, create all kinds of weird stuff, which I haven't even experienced yet. We have to go do that. um, but there's a mine outside of Mena, Arkansas, in the southwest kind of portion where all the crystal vein is. There's a mine there that crystals will just start floating in the air, and they kind of get tossed off the ground and onto things. And
Got chills all over.
I think it's so magical. And I've never been, but I mean, I've a lot of my friends have experienced it, and they're like, it's so real. And so that I just feel like, that's a pilgrimage point. That's these springs, the crystal mines, like all of it. There's so much, and I don't think it's unique to Arkansas. Those New York people didn't even know about our crystals.
Wow.
They were like, "Really? Crystals from Arkansas? Are you sure?"
I'm sure.
We have diamonds too.
Yeah. Yeah. I think even fewer people know that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a different experience altogether.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really incredible. Well, I can't wait to see how it all unfolds for you as you keep walking down this path and
Yeah,
seeing.
I'm feeling this, everything I've learned about, well, I mean, I guess that was the point of me learning about my ancient practices, my ancestral heritage, is I really am like, I learned all of that, and now I want to learn like Ozark folklore and heritage, and I want to create I want to create ceremonies for the land and for our special places.
I love
Some
it. I love it. I love everything about it. I can't wait to see what you do and participate since I'm
yeah,
I
please.
know. Well, before we wrap up, I mean, after now had this experience, you've been in Earth Tenders Academy for a number of years now, but what kind of person would you recommend would join us in our community?
Oh, anybody that's curious about this. I mean, I believe we all have it. And I believe we are all doing this work, whether we know it or not. It's happening. And so yeah, join it so that you can be validated. Honestly, that's I think that might be the biggest takeaway from me, is that I know it's not all in my head. I've gotten so much validation through your practices and your sharings. That if you're curious and you want to be validated on what you think's already going on, come on.
Yeah, love it. I love it. Well, thank you, Shae, for sharing your
Thanks for
experiences.
having me, Amy. I feel so special.
Of course, of course. Happy to have you and catch up. And yeah, I can't wait to go on more adventures with you. So thanks again for being here and sharing.
Thank you.